Welcome to a new season of the Australian Dark Places podcast. My name is Jack Mackenzie, and today I'm speaking to you not from my usual Melbourne studio, but from a motel room in Willow Creek, where 16-year-old Chloe Bishop disappeared without a trace 3 weeks ago. Jack paused, looking out the window at the dusty main street of the town, deathly quiet even at midday. The Australian sun turned the asphalt into a hot frying pan, and the air shimmered with heat, creating mirages where there should be none. But before we begin, I have to tell you something important. This case, it's special. And not just because the police refused to investigate it, chalking up the disappearance to a runaway. The thing is, Willow Creek is where I once lived. Place I left 15 years ago and swore never to return. Jack turned off the recording and leaned back in his chair. His hands were shaking, barely, but he could feel it. In 5 years of hosting the podcast, he'd investigated dozens of cases, interviewed hundreds of people, but he'd never encountered anything so personal. The call from Linda Bishop had come a week ago. The desperate voice of his mother, begging him to come because the police are doing nothing and time is running out. Jack had almost refused. He had enough material for a new season. But when the woman gave him the address, his blood ran cold. Willow Creek, the city of his childhood and nightmares. Jack turned the recording back on. Chloe Bishop disappeared on October 15th, walking home from school. She was last seen at 3:30 p.m. at the bus stop near the library. Her home is a 10-minute walk away, but she never made it. Her phone went dead at 3:47 p.m. The last signal was picked up by a cell phone tower 2 kilometers outside of town, near the old McGregor farm. He opened a folder with photos sent by the girl's mother. Chloe was a beautiful girl with long brown hair and intelligent brown eyes. In her school photos, she looked shy but happy. The usual teenage life in a small town: school, friends, plans for the future. The police conducted a formal investigation. They interviewed classmates, checked school records, searched the house. The verdict: Chloe ran away from home. The motive: problems at home, pressure at school, a desire to start a new life. A standard story for thousands of teenagers across the country. Jack stood up and walked to the window. Across the street was his childhood home, a one-story red brick building with a veranda and a garden that had once been his mother's pride. Another family lived there now, but the memories remained. But Chloe's mother, Linda Bishop, doesn't believe the escape theory. And after talking to her, I'm starting to doubt it too. Jack inserted a tape of the interview he had conducted that morning into the player. "Mrs. Bishop, tell our listeners about your daughter. What was Chloe like?" The woman's voice was tired but determined. "Chloe was special. Not in the sense that she was better than other kids, but in the sense that she saw things that others didn't. Always asking questions, always wanting to understand why people did things the way they did." "Did she have any problems at school? Conflicts with classmates?" "No, nothing like that. Chloe was a quiet girl. She had a few close friends, but she never caused any problems. The teachers liked her, her grades were good." "And at home? Did you have any conflicts?" A long pause. "Mr. Mackenzie, I've been raising my daughter alone since she was 8 years old. Her father, he walked out of our lives. Yes, we had our differences, as any mother and teenage daughter do. But Chloe never said she wanted to leave. In fact, she was planning to go to university in Melbourne, dreaming of becoming a journalist." Jack stopped the recording. Something in the woman's voice told him she wasn't telling the whole truth. She wasn't lying, but she was leaving something out. He continued recording the podcast. I also spoke to Chloe's teachers at the local school. The picture they paint is very different from the police version. The following entry is a conversation with Margaret Stevens, Chloe's homeroom teacher. Chloe was one of the best students in her class. Smart, responsible, always did her assignments on time. A week before she disappeared, she approached me asking about becoming an investigative journalist. She said she wanted to reveal the truth about things people try to hide. Did she say anything specific? Did she mention any events or people? No, but I've noticed that she's become more withdrawn. I've seen her studying old copies of the local newspaper at the library a few times. When I asked her what she was looking for, Chloe said she was writing a project on the history of the city. Jack turned off his player and looked at his watch. It was time for his next interview with Chloe's best friend, Emma Turner. They met at a local cafe, the only place in town that served decent coffee. Emma was a nervous 17-year-old with short blonde hair and eyes red from crying. Emma, when was the last time you spoke to Chloe? The day she disappeared, during recess. She was weird, excited but not in a good way. Said she'd found something important and would show me after school. What exactly did she find? I don't know. Chloe has been secretive for the last 2 weeks. She kept writing things in a notebook that she didn't show to anyone. She also asked me about my grandfather a few times. About grandfather? Why? Emma hesitated. My grandfather is a former policeman. He worked here for 30 years, retired 5 years ago. Chloe asked if he had any old files at home, archives, anything like that. Jack felt his pulse quicken. And what did you tell her? That Grandpa really does have boxes of old documents in his garage. He always said that some cases were left unsolved and that it tormented him. After his interview with Emma, Jack headed to the bishop's home, a small cottage on the outskirts of town. Linda Bishop met him at the door, and he immediately noticed how much she had changed in the few hours since the morning interview. She looked scared. Mr. Mackenzie, I'm glad you're back. After our conversation, I searched Chloe's room again and found something. She led him into the girls' room, a typical teenage bedroom with band posters, photos of friends, and stacks of textbooks. But Linda led him to a desk where a notebook lay open. The police looked through it, but said it was nothing important. School notes, weekend plans, the usual teenage stuff. Jack picked up the notebook and flipped through the pages. Indeed, most of the entries were ordinary. Homework assignments, reminders to meet friends, quotes from books. But the last few pages were different. Chloe was making a list of names and dates. Jack recognized some of the names, locals he remembered from his childhood. But the dates puzzled him. They all dated from 2008-2010. Mrs. Bishop, what was going on in the city during those years? Any special events? The woman frowned. It was a difficult time for Willow Creek. Several families left suddenly, including yours. There was talk of problems, but no one said anything concrete. Jack felt old memories begin to surface, bits of conversations his parents had had when they thought he was asleep. Words like, "It's dangerous," "We have to leave," "No one can know." "Mrs. Bishop, may I have this notebook? For analysis." "Sure, just be careful." After I showed it to the police, I got the feeling that the house was being watched. That evening, Jack returned to the motel and continued recording the podcast. Dear listeners, the first day of the investigation raised more questions than it answered. Chloe Bishop was no ordinary teenage runaway. She was searching for something, exploring the past of this town, and she may have found something that someone really didn't want to reveal. Jack paused, looking at the girl's notebook. I'm asking anyone who listens to this podcast and knows anything about Chloe Bishop or the events at Willow Creek in 2008, 2010, to contact me. Any information could be important. He gave a phone number and email, then prepared to end the episode. Tomorrow, I plan to talk to the local police and the phone rang. Jack looked at the display, an unknown number. Hello? The voice was male but distorted. Obviously the man was using a modulator. Mr. Mackenzie, I'm listening to your podcast. I have a warning. Stop digging, or you'll find more than you bargained for. Chloe knew something she shouldn't have known. Who is this? What do you know about Chloe? Enough to know that she's dead, like everyone else who learns too much about this city's past. The connection was interrupted. Jack sat in the quiet of the room, feeling the adrenaline rush through his veins. He turned on the recording and added to the episode, Dear listeners, something unexpected just happened. I received an anonymous threatening call. This means we are on the right track. Someone really doesn't want the truth about Chloe Bishop to be known. He turned off the recording and uploaded the episode to a podcast platform. Within an hour, comments from listeners began pouring in. Expressions of support, theories about what might have happened to the girl, and a few messages from people who claimed to know something about Willow Creek. One message in particular caught his attention. A user named Pravda2009 wrote, Jack, be careful. What happened to your family is connected to what is happening now. Check your dad's old posts. Jack stared at the screen. Who could know about his family? And what records did his father have? He recalled that after the move, his parents burned many documents, saying that they were starting a new life. But perhaps something survived. Jack took the keys to his rental car. It was time to visit his childhood home and find out what secrets his own past hid. And why was Chloe Bishop's disappearance linked to events that happened 15 years ago? Welcome to the second episode of the investigation into the disappearance of Chloe Bishop. My name is Jack Mackenzie, and I woke up this morning realizing that this case is much more complicated than it initially appeared. Jack sat in his motel room, staring at the girl's notebook open on the table. He hadn't slept a wink that night, studying Chloe's notes, trying to understand the logic of her research. The list of names and dates from 2008-2010 haunted him, like ghosts from a past he was trying to forget. I received an anonymous threatening call last night. That shows we are moving in the right direction. But there is something else I need to tell my listeners. Jack took a deep breath. The admission had not come easy to him. Willow Creek isn't just a random place to investigate, it's my childhood town. I lived here until I was 12, when my family suddenly moved in 2009. My parents told me I had suffered a head injury and lost some of my memories. Now I'm beginning to suspect the truth was something else entirely. It was drizzling outside, a rare sight for this part of Australia in October. Grey clouds covered the town like a burial shroud, turning the familiar streets of childhood into the setting for a horror film. This morning I met Margaret O'Brien, who has worked at the local library for 40 years. She remembers my family. Jack turned on the recording of the interview. Mrs. O'Brien, tell me about Dr. Robert Mackenzie. What kind of man was my father? The elderly woman's voice trembled with emotion. Your father was a complicated man, Jack. Outwardly, he was an ideal family man, a respected doctor. Everyone in town loved him, especially the children. He always carried candy with him and knew how to find an approach to each child. But there were rumors, whispers. Some parents began to avoid his clinic for no apparent reason. And then that misfortune happened to little Sarah Connolly. Jack paused the recording. Sarah Connolly's name was on Chloe's notepad, underlined in red pen. Now he knew why. After talking to Mrs. O'Brien, I went to the archives of the local newspaper, the Willow Creek Herald. What I found there made me rethink everything I thought I knew about my childhood. Jack unfolded a printout of a newspaper article from June 15th, 2009, in front of the microphone. Headline: Willow River Tragedy. 8-year-old girl found dead. The official version is that Sarah Connolly drowned while swimming, but there are details that are haunting. The girl was an experienced swimmer. The river in that area is shallow, and bruises were found on her body, which experts attributed to hitting rocks when she fell. Jack put the newspaper down and continued writing. But the most interesting thing is my parents' reaction to this tragedy. I remember my father becoming nervous, my mother crying at night, and a month later we suddenly moved. My parents said, "My father had a better job in Melbourne, but now I understand." We fled. Jack's phone rang. Another unfamiliar number. "Hello? Mr. Mackenzie? My name is Emma Taylor. I'm a journalism student at the University of Melbourne, and I've been listening to your podcast since season 1. Hello, Emma. How can I help you? I've done my own research into the Chloe Bishop case. I think I have some information that might interest you." Jack turned on the recording. "Tell me what you found." "I have studied newspaper archives and police reports from 2008, 2010. In addition to Sarah Connolly, there have been several other strange incidents involving children in the area. 2 boys disappeared for several days, then were found in woods with memory loss. 1 girl was hospitalized with unexplained injuries." Jack felt a chill run down his spine. And what connects these cases? All the children were patients of Dr. Robert Mackenzie at some point. And all the incidents stopped after your family left town. After talking to Emma, Jack knew he couldn't put off the inevitable any longer. He needed to talk to Tom Connolly, Sarah's father. The Connolly's house was on the outskirts of town, a lonely building among dead eucalyptus trees. Jack parked the car and walked to the door, his pulse quickening. Tom Connolly turned out to be a man of about 60, with a grey beard and eyes in which eternal sadness had settled. He recognized Jack at once. "Dr. Mackenzie's son," he said without surprise. "I expected you to return sooner or later." They sat on the veranda, and Tom began the story that would change Jack's life forever. Sarah was a special child, smart, trusting, always ready to help. When she started having health problems, we turned to your father. He was the only pediatrician in the area. Tom paused, looking at the horizon. At first, everything was fine. Dr. Mackenzie was attentive, caring. Sarah even said that he was her favorite doctor, but then something changed. What exactly? Sarah became withdrawn, nervous. She began to be afraid of going to the doctor. One day she told me that Dr. Mackenzie was doing bad touches and making her keep quiet about it. Jack felt sick. The world around him began to crumble. "What did you do?" "I went to the police. But Sergeant Bishop, the grandfather of the girl who is now missing, said that they needed proof, that the charges against the respected doctor required serious investigation." Tom stood up and began to walk around the veranda. And the next day Sarah disappeared. They found her in the river 3 days later. Officially, an accident. But I knew the truth. Why didn't you insist on an investigation? I insisted. But a week later, your family suddenly left. The case was closed due to lack of evidence, and they made it clear to me that if I continued to make noise, I might end up near my daughter. Jack recorded the interview with Tom Connolly and returned to the motel in shock. All the pieces of the puzzle were falling into place. His father was a pedophile. Sarah Connolly died because she wanted to tell the truth, and his own memories were erased so he couldn't testify against his father. But the worst was yet to come. If Chloe's grandfather had helped hush up the case, the girl might have found out about it. Perhaps she had found old documents, photographs, notes, and someone had killed her to protect a secret that had been going on for 15 years. Jack sat down to write down the most difficult episode of his life. Dear listeners, what I'm about to tell you will change not only this investigation, but my life forever. I have discovered that Chloe Bishop's disappearance is connected to crimes of the past. Crimes that involved my own father. Jack's voice trembled, but he continued. Dr. Robert Mackenzie, who I remembered as a loving father, was a pedophile. He used his position as a doctor to abuse children. When one of the victims, 8-year-old Sarah Connolly, decided to tell the truth, she was murdered and made to look like an accident. Jack paused, gathering his strength. Chloe Bishop may have found out. Her grandfather, Police Sergeant Frank Bishop, helped cover up the case in 2009. If Chloe found evidence, someone may have killed her to protect the secret. After recording the episode, Jack uploaded it online and lay on his bed, feeling empty. In the space of 2 days, his world had been turned upside down. He was no longer just a podcaster investigating a girl's disappearance. He was the son of a murderer, searching for the truth about his own past. The phone rang at 10:30 in the evening. An unfamiliar number. Jack Mackenzie? The voice was male, familiar, but Jack couldn't recognize it. Yes. My name is David Harris. I was a friend of your father's. I listened to your podcast. What do you want? Talk. There are things about the past that you don't know, things that might explain what happened to Chloe. Jack hesitated. It could be a trap. Where shall we meet? At the old McGregor farm. The same one where Chloe's phone last pinged. Tomorrow at midnight. Why there? And why so late? Because that's where that accident happened in your childhood. The one that left you with memory loss. It's time to learn the truth, Jack. The whole truth. The connection was interrupted. Jack sat in the darkness of the room, knowing that tomorrow's meeting could be the last of his life. But he had no choice. The truth about Chloe, about Sarah, about his own past was out there somewhere, on the abandoned farm among the eucalyptus trees. He turned on the recorder and recorded his last message. Dear listeners, tomorrow night I'm meeting with a man who claims to know the whole truth. If anything happens to this tape, know that I've been trying to find Chloe Bishop, and I may have found a lot more than I expected. Outside, the Australian night was full of sounds. The rustling of leaves, the cries of night birds, the distant howl of a dingo. But Jack thought he heard another sound, a child's cry, coming from a past that refused to stay buried. Tomorrow he will find out who his father really was, and what happened on the McGregor farm in that distant childhood, the memory of which was erased, but not completely destroyed. The truth awaited him among the ghosts of the past, and perhaps Chloe Bishop was among them. This is the third and final episode of the investigation into the disappearance of Chloe Bishop. My name is Jack Mackenzie, and what I'm about to tell you will change not only this case, but my understanding of my life forever. Jack sat in his car on the dirt road leading to the McGregor farm. It was 1:15, the Australian moon casting a ghostly glow over the dead gum trees. His portable recording equipment was on the passenger seat. He had decided to broadcast the final episode live, no matter what happened at the meeting. Dear listeners, if you are hearing this recording, it means I am still alive. If the broadcast suddenly stops, well, then you will know what happened to Jack Mackenzie. The last 24 hours had been a time of too much revelation. Dozens of people had called him after the second episode of the podcast aired. Some were supportive, others shared their own stories of small-town violence, but there was one call that made his blood run cold. "Uncle Jack, is that really you?" The voice was young, female, recorded on an answering machine. Jack listened to the message 3 times before he realized who it was. Chloe Bishop, alive. "Uncle Jack, I know you don't remember me. Mom said you had memory problems after the accident, but I remember you. You used to come to our house when I was little, before Mom forbade you to come." Jack paused the recording, feeling the world crumble around him. Chloe was his niece, the daughter of a sister he didn't remember ever having. "Uncle Jack, I found Grandpa's papers. I know what happened to Grandpa Robert. I know what he did to the kids, and I know you helped him." The last words sounded like a death sentence. Jack turned on the podcast recording again. "An hour ago, I got a text from Chloe Bishop. She's alive. She's in hiding, and she told me the truth I wasn't ready to hear." Jack got out of the car and headed toward the old farm buildings. The main house had long since collapsed, but the barn still stood, a grim structure of darkened wood and rusty metal. "Chloe Bishop is my niece, the daughter of my sister Melanie, whom I had forgotten until today. Melanie committed suicide 10 years ago, unable to bear the weight of family secrets. Chloe was raised by her mother, Linda Bishop, who was married to the son of Sergeant Frank Bishop." Jack approached the barn, holding the recorder in one hand and the flashlight in the other. But the worst discovery is yet to come. According to the documents Chloe found, I wasn't just a witness to my father's crimes. I was an accomplice. The barn door creaked open into darkness. Inside, it smelled of old hay and something else, a smell that stirred deep-seated memories. "Jack," the voice came from deep within the barn. A man stepped out of the shadows, gray-haired and thin, with eyes that Jack recognized, though he couldn't remember where. "David Harris?" "Uncle David to you, boy. I was your father's best friend, and his partner." Harris came closer and Jack saw a gun in his hand. "Are you writing this down?" "Yes." "Okay. Let the people know the truth, the whole truth." Harris pointed to the old stalls at the back of the barn. "This is where it all happened, Jack. Your father brought the kids here, told them it was a game, a special treatment, and you helped him." The memories came flooding back, vivid, painful, terrifying. Jack saw himself at 12, bringing other children into the barn. He heard his own voice telling them not to be afraid, not to tell their parents. "I was a child," he croaked. "You were an accomplice, and when Sarah Connolly threatened to tell, it was you who brought her here one last time." Jack fell to his knees, the tape recorder slipping from his hands but continuing to record. "Listen, dear listeners," Harris said, holding up the device. You are hearing the confessions of Jack Mackenzie, a man who has spent his life searching for the truth about the crimes he himself committed. "Where's Chloe?" Jack asked. "Safe. Bye." The girl is smart. She found old notes from Frank's grandfather. She realized the connection between the disappearances of children and your family, but she made a mistake. She tried to contact you. Harris sat down next to Jack. "Chloe didn't know you didn't remember. She thought you could help her expose the network. But when she saw your podcast, she realized you really didn't remember. Or you were pretending." "I wasn't pretending. I really didn't remember. Selective amnesia. Your brain was protecting you from the trauma, but the podcast triggered the memories, didn't it?" Jack nodded. He remembered everything now. Every face, every name, every crime. The network still exists, Jack. The children of those involved back then are continuing the work. Chloe threatened. "It. Did you kill her?" "No. But we should have. Instead, we decided to use her to lure you back. We knew that sooner or later you would remember. And when that happened, you would become a threat." Harris stood up and pointed the gun at Jack. "Officially, you will commit suicide out of guilt, unable to bear the burden of memories of your crimes. And Chloe? Chloe will be gone forever, just like it was supposed to be from the start." At that moment, another figure emerged from the shadows. Jack recognized it immediately. Tom Connolly, Sarah's father. "Tom?" Harris asked, surprised. "What are you doing here?" "What I should have done 15 years ago." Tom had a hunting rifle in his hands, aimed at Harris. "You thought I didn't know that you were part of this too, that you helped them kill my daughter?" "Tom, be reasonable. I've been waiting for this moment for 15 years. The shot rang out in the stillness of the night. Harris fell, the bullet hitting him in the chest, but he had enough strength to fire back with his pistol. Tom Connolly collapsed next to him. Jack crawled over to the tape recorder, which continued recording. "Dear listeners, have you just witnessed justice? Revenge? I don't know the difference anymore. Harris dying croaked his last words. Chloe, in the old house, on Oak Street, basement, she's still alive." Jack took the keys to Harris's car and sped to the address. The house on Oak Street turned out to be an abandoned building on the outskirts of town. In the basement, tied to an old pipe, sat Chloe Bishop, alive but broken. "Uncle Jack," she whispered, "I knew you'd come. Chloe, I'm so sorry. Do you remember now?" "Yes, I remember everything." Jack freed the girl and took her to the hospital. Then he called the police and told them everything about the pedophile network, about his father's crimes, about his own involvement in them. A week later, he recorded the final episode of the podcast. "My name is Jack Mackenzie. I started this investigation to find a missing girl. I found her, but I also found a truth about myself that I wasn't ready to accept." Jack sat in a holding cell awaiting trial. Chloe Bishop is alive and well. A pedophile ring that operated in Willow Creek for more than 2 decades has been busted. 8 people have been arrested, including former police officers, teachers, and community leaders. He paused, gathering his courage. "But I'm not the hero of this story. I was a child victim who became an accomplice. I helped my father find new victims. And even though I was only 12 years old, that doesn't make me innocent." The Australian sun was shining outside the cell window, but Jack no longer saw any warmth in it. "Tomorrow I will appear in court. I don't know what awaits me, but I know one thing. The truth always finds a way to come out, even if it takes decades. Jack turned off the recorder and handed the recording to his lawyer for publication. That was the final episode of the Australia's Dark Secrets podcast. Thank you to everyone who listened. And remember, monsters don't always look like monsters. Sometimes they look like your neighbors, your teachers, your doctors, like me. The podcast has racked up millions of listens. The Chloe Bishop case has become an international sensation. But for Jack, it wasn't a triumph. It was a penance. In prison, he received a letter from Chloe. "Uncle Jack, I know what you think of yourself, but you saved me. Yes, you were part of a terrible past, but you also became part of a fair present. That should count for something." Jack folded the letter and tucked it into the pocket of his prison uniform. Maybe Chloe was right. Maybe redemption was possible even for someone like him. But some sins are too grave to forgive, and some truths are too painful to live with. On the last night before his trial, Jack lay on his prison bed, listening to the sounds of the night. Somewhere in the darkness, a child was crying. Perhaps real, perhaps a ghost from his own childhood. He never knew the difference. The truth freed him from lies, but imprisoned him in the cage of his own guilt, and it was a fair price for the sins he could no longer forget.